Every community, it's not about tradition, it's about revitalization. There's elements of things that stay the same and elements of things that constantly are being revitalized. There's death and rebirth always.
Chamberlin Powell Bon were trying to create a vision of the modern for the City Fathers. They had to imagine what they wanted the modern to be, and they kept on revamping their ideas, remodernising them as their idea about what modern was changed. And gradually it went from quite a Miesian and low-level Corbusian idea of the modern to a sort of fully-fledged brutalist idea of the modern. And it was much more self-consciously luxurious. They become much more aware of textures, of colours, of the idea of warmth, of different lighting conditions, all sorts of qualities which would only come from being given one idea and asked to think about it for 10 years.
Planned in 1955, construction started in 1962. The Art Centre actually was a late addition and wasn't planned in the current form until 1968, and then the residential was completed in 1974, with the Art Centre being completed in 1982. If you take it from planning to completion, it's almost 30 years.
Barbican is the legacy of Le Corbusier and the philosophy of trying to build these kind of utopian environments within the city where a lot of people can live together in a communal and collective way. The idea, or the utopian idea, is very important. I think it's been a beacon for architects all around the world.
Barbican site was earmarked for residential development rather than commercial development. Although what we have around us here is a council estate, it was always designed as a council estate for wealthy people, specifically for people who work nearby in the financial district.
The voluntary ghetto thing, I think, was just the time. There was this huge reaction against the modern, and the Barbican was a great vehicle for it. And it was an easy target because it's the City of London and it's money. But what you've got to remember is that Arthur Scargill lived here the same time as Norm Tebbit. So, clearly it has something for everybody.
You need ways to bring people together. In Italian cities, it was the piazza. The piazza brought people together. The piazza was the political, cultural centre. That's the place where people congregated. This art centre is a very good focus in a way. It brings people together. You walk out of your door and suddenly you've got a theatre, you've got 3 cinemas, you've got a concert hall, 2 galleries, a library. My local library's in here as well. So it's fantastic.
What we have down here in the kind of south side around the art centre and around the gardens is a very kind of traditional housing model. Private gardens surrounded by high housing. See, it's a Georgian square, more or less. You can see a little row of mews houses.
And when you look out of the windows of these houses, you're down in the gardens and you're looking up and there's a 360-foot tower above you. It feels, it's a really fantastic view.
There's various points around the estate where there's a sense of separation from the outside world. You have the high walks, and you have these very defence-focused medieval design tropes. The very word Barbican comes from a Latin word barbicana, which means a fort on a city wall. There are various design tropes which repeat on the outside of all of the buildings, and also reflected in the Arts Centre. One of them is this semicircular shape, inspired by a section of the old London Wall, a bastion, a semicircular corner piece which is still intact. So it's very kind of ubiquitous, from large-scale examples to small-scale examples.
Part of the rubric of modernism is that you use the functionality of an object as a decorative item. And in a weird way, what they did is they took the engineering of the 19th century and tried to make it into an aesthetic. And there are two things they referenced. One was the classical squares of London, which I mentioned earlier, but the other thing is that at that time, when Broad Street stations still existed, there was this whole network of railways, railway arches, this engineering brick. So yeah, there's absolutely, in a strange way, a very postmodern response to the historical in what is really a very modern building.
Another design feature is the crenellation, which is borrowed directly from the roofline of St Giles's without Cripplegate, which is in the heart of the estate. This rough concrete finish was all done by hand, by workers with handheld pneumatic drills, roughing up the surface of the concrete to expose the dark granite aggregate which lies inside it.
The concept of architecture is not a building, but is a relationship. An interaction between a building, the people who frequent it, and the wider landscape.
If I bring students out, I even take them down into car parks, which have their own kind of wonderful thing. I like the fact this kind of landscape with mountains and hills and trees, and you're walking through this landscape. It really is a good megastructure in that sense.
There is a feeling I have, anyway, being here, that I'm in a little village, you know, like, yeah, a little bubble. But I think that's very important because in some ways, in a big city like London, actually you need to be able to feel like that. And in fact, in many ways, London is and always has been actually a series of villages. And we do, as people, the city is too big. We need sort of smaller situations, if you like, smaller contexts in which to live, villages, communities, and this provides that. I feel connected to the people on my estate, feel connected to some of the people around here, and that's really important. There are suburbs of London which have almost the opposite feeling of that.
Architects don't really understand housing anymore. They've got no idea what housing ought to be. It's a dead subject. The truth about most architecture that gets built now is that it is corporate architecture or hutches for people to buy. And you don't have this sense, because there hasn't been any mass destruction in recent times, that you've got to build for everybody.